Mucus removal protocol towards immune system maintenance. This is your brother, Dr. David Roots. Give thanks, family. Dr. David Roots, greetings to all. Peace, love, and respect to everyone. Coming with another teaching, another presentation, a very important one at this time. Right now, no matter when you see this video, as a time stamp, it is March 2020. If you look into the records, if you're watching this video in history, in the future, you will see that right now is the time of the 2020 coronavirus crisis. The reality is that actually before this crisis came about, I had started to plan this video. I'd say probably I've been holding on to this presentation probably around November, and the coronavirus crisis really took off in December as far as I can remember, and then obviously now we're in March in full flight. In respect to that, what I'm talking about in this video is not directly related to the so-called symptoms of coronavirus at its extremes, but more so related towards everyday issues with mucus in the body, but that can be extended to times of illness as well. So during times of colds, during times of flu, head colds, sinus issues, asthma issues, all of these things relate to mucus. And so the ability to move and remove that mucus from your system as a way to maintain your immune system is extremely important, and that's what this video is about. I am not a medical doctor, but I am a student of natural medicine, so as a disclaimer, you go ahead and do your own research. I present this information for advisory purposes only. So let's go forward with the presentation regarding mucus removal protocol. This, when I say protocol, it is something, a system by which I use to, for many years, to remove mucus from my body, to make sure that I don't have buildup of mucus, and in the events that I do, if I ever get ill, or if my children get ill, my family, my partner, I immediately move into trying to ensure that these things are put into place. So let's go forward and look at some of the recommendations and some of the science behind it. Okay, good. So let's start with this, the body's core functions. This is just straight off the internet. This is straight from our, basic high school, secondary school education. We all should have an awareness of our body and its core functions so that we can have optimum health. And our body's core functions are based around the organ systems and the different systems within our body, because the organ systems help to work together to help our body carry out the different processes it needs for us to survive. So if we want to not just survive, but if we want to thrive, we need to ensure that our body's core functions in relation to these organs and organ systems are at optimum, running at optimum level. So some of the key ones, and of course the body is a very complex machine, and we could talk for hours, and there's countless information out there about the body. but we're just going to talk about some of the core ones that as it relates to mucus. When it talks about your heart, your heart needs to be healthy, because your heart is what is going to, what we call the circulatory system. The main job is to pump that life-giving blood, life-giving river around the body. And in that blood, you're going to have your red blood cells, you're going to have your white blood cells, you're going to have your platelets, you're going to have your plasma. And within those components, you're going to have the oxygen that all of your cells need in order to survive, in order to carry out respiration, to give you energy, in order to break down the toxins that are in your body. You need to have high amounts of oxygen flowing through your body. Your blood is needed to remove the carbon dioxide, which is a poison, from the body as a byproduct of respiration, to transport the glucose that we need for respiration to all of the cells so that they can have energy, and as well as to carry out maintenance through the immune response, such as taking the different aspects of the white blood cells and all the various forms around the body. So it's the blood that is important to that. The brain is key for the homeostasis and response, meaning how the body is maintained in a stable condition. Things like temperature in the hypothalamus, things like your response to maintaining water balance in the pituitary gland, and the response of the nervous systems. We're moving people, so we need to be able to respond, and it's the brain and the central nervous system that helps to do this. The memory of the brain, as we know that brain health is key to having a good memory, and a good memory is key to being able to survive. And as we get older, our memory can be affected as our brain deteriorates. So we want to keep that as healthy as possible. Our lungs, hugely important, of course. I put these three major ones here because if your heart stops, they're going to give you CPR, which they're going to try to stimulate the heart, as well as the respiratory system, the lungs, okay? And so they need to keep you alive. You need that heart to be pumping, and you need your lungs to be taking in oxygen and removing CO2, okay? And then the brain can function off of that. Someone can be so-called brain dead, but still alive if the heart and the lungs are working. So the lung health is vital for our optimum survival and optimum thriving in as living beings, being able to take in that oxygen and then remove the carbon dioxide. Okay, so our lungs are vital, as well as for removing water from the system and taking in and keeping our lungs moist. Your lungs need to function properly, because without a certain aspect of moisture in the lungs, the diffusion between the oxygen and the CO2, how the oxygen comes in to the lungs and then goes out to the lungs or into the blood and out from the blood, the CO2 out from the blood, will not work as effectively. So the lungs need to work so it can have this exchange of gases, and without that, then the blood is not going to be as healthy as it needs to, because the blood is carrying those gases. And without that, the brain is not going to be healthy, because the brain needs those gases to be exchanged. One of the ways that people unfortunately can pass is if they can get, for example, carbon monoxide poisoning or carbon dioxide poisoning too. And that's because the brain and the body, but the brain in particular, becomes unfunctional, dysfunctional, they're non-functional, because the gases are not being exchanged. It's being saturated with poisonous gases like carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. So this exchange of gases is very, very vital to our body's core functions. And then you have numerous other organs within our body. I just put down glands, but you have, so many other organs: the stomach, the pancreas, the intestines, reproductive organs. countless, and they are the ones that are vestigial, you know, the appendix and things like the pineal gland, things they say we don't really use anymore, the muscular system, the skeletal system, which is alive. Your bones are alive because they produce the red and white blood cells and so much more. The health of these organs is vital for our body to function, and the better your organs are functioning, the more alive you will feel, and the more healthy you feel, and the more well you feel. And all of it relates down to those three things I put at the end: the transportation of fluids, transportation of gases. Basically, these transport channels, things have to move within the body. And one of the best ways we're going to talk about of keeping healthy is just to continue things moving. If you're not breathing, you're not living. If your heart's not pumping, it's not living. If your brain is not firing off, you know, the electrical impulses, it's not living. So movement itself is life. Movement itself is life. In Genesis, it talks about, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the deep, you know, the dark. And so that movement is how creation and existence comes into place. Okay, so that's a quick overview on the body's core functions, and we're going to relate that now to mucus. And just keep in mind, the point of all of that is that in order for us to be healthy, the body's core functions need to be working at an optimal level. So in saying that, how does our body protect against disease? How do we keep all of those organs and organ systems and all the cells and all the different organizational hierarchy of the body, right down to the cellular level, all the way up to the organism level, healthy? Well, this again is something that your children, if they're in secondary school and high school, will be learning. And so it's something that we need to be aware of, because it's not just for information's sake. This should inform the way that we live our lives. Okay, inform the things we eat, inform the things we do, inform how we conduct ourselves, inform what we watch, so on and so on. So the body has a natural defense, which we call immunity, or the immune system against disease. And it's not just one thing. People talk about the immune system like it's just the lymphatic system. And the immune system is a whole gamut, a range of different aspects of features that our body has been endowed with in order to protect ourselves against disease. And it starts with the skin. You've heard that cliche talking about the skin being the largest organ in the body. It stretches over all our body, and the reality is that our skin is on the outside, what we can see, but it's also on the inside, okay, epithelial cells. So our body is just one big bag containing stuff with tubes running through it from our mouth to our anus. You know, that's what the body is, and our ears, and just several tubes put in place so that things can enter. Okay, so the skin is important to protect against disease. It's the first barrier, it's the first wall to protect against disease. So if your skin is not healthy, and if you're not practicing proper hygiene, then you won't be healthy. Your body won't be healthy, and you will be more susceptible to disease. And so when we talk about disease, we talk about not just the invasion of pathogens like bacteria and viruses and fungi and protists and so on and so on, but also in terms of just the invasion of the environment, because the skin can, like any other surface, can be deteriorated by just the environmental conditions. So good hygiene is of huge importance, and we're going to talk about that a bit later. Our tears, all the different fluids, our tears, for example, our eyes are hugely important as sense organs. They need to be protected. So our tears have a pH that resists the viability of pathogens that may enter into our body, okay, particularly bacteria and fungal pathogens, not as effective for viruses, because viruses are, just proteins that can affect cells, and so they are quite small, and so they can enter into our body. But even the tears itself, if your tears and your body is working at the right conditions, your tears are hugely important to protecting against the invasion of disease. The cilia, so all the little hairs that line those tubes. We said the body is a bag with these tubes from your ears to your nose to your mouth to your rectum, to your reproductive organs. So you have hairs that line the system, and that will sweep away and sweep forward away dust and mucus. And the mucus, which is sticky, will trap the dust and will trap the pathogens, and so these hairs will just keep moving them away. So for example, a good part of it is, a good example of this is in our ears, where you have the movement of wax down the ears. You have these in our respiratory tract, you have these cilia that just move constantly. Okay, it's like trees in the wind moving the dust away. So it's important for us to have our cilia working properly. So for example, people who smoke often have issues with mucus because they're basically burning the cilia in their body, in the respiratory passages, and they're not working properly to carry away that tar, that dust, the mucus, and so on, which can lead to things like emphysema and bronchitis. The blood has a pH level that is designed to resist the growth of bacteria. There's a lot of talk about, not just bacteria, but of pathogens. There's a lot of talk about having an alkaline body. While the body has different alkalinities and different pH, across itself. So within a woman's reproductive system, the body tends to be more acidic. Okay, I believe underneath your arms tend to be more acidic also, and that will resist the growth of bacteria, growth of living things. Okay, and the blood pH, let's just check that really quickly. Blood. (7.35 to 7.45), slightly alkaline or basic. Okay, so the blood is slightly alkaline or basic. So the blood pH is important because it's designed so that all of the different components that it carries, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the plasma, can all work properly and work in a optimal way. But when you compare that now to something like the stomach acid is at a very, very low pH, very acidic. So there's a range of different pHs across the body designed so that we can, our body can protect itself against the invasion of different pathogens. Okay, blood clotting, as we said, the blood contains platelets. So if you happen to get a cut or something like that, immediately your blood will start to clot, and that will keep the, try to reduce as quickly as possible the infection from bacteria or from viruses or anything trying to get into the fortress, which is the body. Now, another part of the immune system is stuff that we tend to associate with disease, and this is very important because things like inflammation and mucus are part of that immune response. So if you were to sprain your ankle starts to inflame, okay, and act as a protective blanket, a protective cushion around the damaged parts of your body. Okay, in fact, with this coronavirus thing that's going on right now, they're saying that people that have been taking anti-inflammatories are actually worse off if they suffer from the respiratory conditions. Why? Because the body uses inflammation as a way to bring up damaged tissue, and that damaged tissue either can be removed or that damaged tissue can be used as a protective measure for the things underneath while the things underneath repair. Okay, so inflammation is not a bad thing if inflammation is out of control, of course, but your body is an intelligent mechanism, is an intelligent organism. It has feedback loops. So if it needs to inflame something, something's going to be inflamed. If a bee stings you, then that part of your body is going to inflame to try to protect that damage from spreading further down. Inflammation is a huge part of the healing response. Mucus itself, which is the focus of this video, people see mucus as something bad per se. Mucus is vital for the body to operate properly. It's found all over our body, within our body, in our mucous membranes, as well as within the passages in our body. So in the woman's reproductive system, in our digestive system, mucus is hugely important, okay, as a way to protect against disease. And we're going to find out a bit more in detail after that. And a big component of that are things like the white blood cells, which are carried within not just the blood, not just the lymph, but also within the mucus. So the body has this range of different measures to protect against disease. As we said, we want our organs and our different organ systems to operate optimally. And so we need to make sure we are doing all we can to facilitate the optimum operation of these range of immune protective measures that our body has innately within inside it. So let's get a bit more focus on the whole mucus thing. So I spoke about the lungs and how the lungs are so vital to the inhalation of oxygen and water vapor, okay, and the exhalation of carbon dioxide. And most of us should know the basics of the lung. The lungs are like a tree, upside down tree with many branches, and the branches just keep getting smaller and smaller until they end in what's called the alveoli or alveoli, which are air sacs. They're very, very, very tiny air sacs, okay, microscopic air sacs. And I put a histogram, a cellular diagram, cross section here on the right hand side of some lung tissue, okay, and you can see here it says alveoli. It's the air sacs, the individual air sacs. So having the lungs operating, because the whole function of the lungs is to carry air up and down. As the air goes down, it then gets to the alveoli and then is able to be transferred into the bloodstream and oxygenate the blood. So when we take a deep breath, we're oxygenating our body and it makes us feel better, okay? And when we exhale, it's removing the carbon dioxide from our body, from our blood, which is extremely important because the cells are constantly respiring, they're constantly using up oxygen and making carbon dioxide, which we need to remove because, as we said, it's a poison, okay? So how does mucus relate to that? So mucus is a sticky substance. We're going to learn more about the structure and the composition of mucus in a second. But for now, it's a sticky substance. And if those air passages are blocked, then you're not going to have the effective removal of carbon dioxide and the effective entry of oxygen so that you can oxygenate your blood. And then that's going to affect your blood. That's going to affect the pH of your blood. That's going to affect for example, carbon dioxide forms carbonic acid, okay? So when we have too much carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide in our blood, it can acidify our blood. And as we said, our blood should be at a slightly alkaline, at a more of a neutral, slightly alkaline range. So we need to have our lungs operating properly, and we need to have our lungs clear. So having mucus does not allow for that. So we don't need mucus in our lungs. And our lungs, you know, we have the diaphragm, which is below just above the stomach, and just below the rib cage. So our lungs are these huge organs, but as I said, the passages within them are very small. So we need to make sure that they are free of mucus, because the mucus can get into the tiny passages of the lungs and make it very difficult for us to breathe, especially if you have underlying conditions like asthma, like hay fever, things like that, which can further constrict the airways, as a steroid response can make the airways inflame. So when the airways inflame, they can get smaller because you just got more things inflaming. Okay, things are getting bigger, so it can reduce the volume of the channels of which air can pass through, and we don't need mucus to interrupt with that. And as I have here on this diagram, when you smoke now, it makes it worse, because smoking, the heat from the smoke and the tar from the smoke will damage the structure of the lungs, the bronchioles and the alveoli, and basically not allow the effective passage of the air in and out of those air sacs. So having mucus can make it even worse. But smoking actually causes mucus to be produced. We're going to talk about that in a second. So lungs and mucus. Now, key to this is understanding the sinuses. Okay, what your sinuses are, and mucus. Okay, and the role that mucus plays. So, contrary to many people's belief, your sinuses are not just these passages behind the sort of nose here. Okay, when you hold your nose, you can hear that sound of your voice in your head. That's because sound travels through air. All right, and we can hear that sound. Sound travels through a medium, but we can hear the sound like we hear it because it's not coming directly around only, it's also resonating within the air passages within our skull. And those air passages, those air chambers, are called the sinuses. They're hugely important, okay, the sinuses, that they are kept moist, not dry, and clear. Why? Well, if you've ever been in a plane and you've had a head cold, you will know that the sinuses can build up, your head can build up pressure, and that pressure can be very painful. So if your sinuses are not clear, the pressure balances in your head, okay, on your organs like your eyes, like your brain, are not going to feel comfortable, and the things are not going to operate properly. All right? If your sinuses are not clear, when you eat, you're not going to be able to chew properly, because your sinuses are important for allowing you to chew and breathe at the same time. So if you're constantly having to open your mouth because your sinuses are blocked while you're eating, that means your food will not be chewed properly, broken down properly, or efficiently. That means you're not going to digest it properly, because the food has to be very, very broken down in order for the digestive enzymes to work on it. Okay, so your sinuses also are important to, for example, as a runner, they will tell you to breathe through your nose, not through your mouth. And they'll say exhale through your mouth. You can inhale more, hence why the design of your nose is wide like that with your nostrils, okay? And breathe more effectively in through the nose. One, your nose has the filters of the nose hairs and the cilia. So when you breathe in through your nose, you're filtering, that's your filtering system for the air that is coming into your lungs. And the cleaner the air, the better, and the more efficiently your lungs are going to operate. So having clear sinuses allows you to ensure that you can breathe. And so you can see this diagram here, that you have the frontal sinuses, the nasal cavity, okay, and behind that you have the sinuses, which are all connected to that cavity, okay. This is a better example. So you can see passages from the side, from the cross section between the sphenoid sinus, and there's a passage that runs through, as well as here in the frontal sinus, okay. So there are lots of chambers that are interconnected. One of the most important chambers is the eustachian tube, okay, the eustachian tube. So this is the chamber that will run from your nose and throat up towards your ears. So when you want to unblock your ears, you can squeeze your nose and swallow, okay? And that's all to do with the balancing of the air pressure within the sinuses, in particular the way the eustachian tube interacts with the inner ear and the other chambers within the skull. So the sinuses are really important for your balance, they're important for you breathing, they're important for your digestion, they're important for the pressure on your eyes. A lot of times if we're not eating properly, we're going to feel pressure on our eyes. If we have a head cold, we're going to feel pressure on our eyes, and that's all to do with our sinuses, our hearing, okay. The sinuses is really important, and it's just chambers. It's like a cave. So we have to keep this cave, as you know, if you've been in a cave or a room, you need to keep that room fresh and clean, moist but not adversely moist, in which it will create a breeding ground for things like bacteria and fungus. Because as you breathe, you're breathing in thousands and thousands of particles of bacteria, of fungus and viruses, and they can use that room, that cave, okay, and breed and grow if the conditions are correct. Just like if you have a room that has mold in it, that's not being ventilated properly, that's like what the sinuses can function at, and they can serve as an entry point for disease. So having mucus-free sinuses, now the mucus needs to be on the sinuses as a protective measure, but if you have excess mucus in your sinuses, it's a sure way to end up with illnesses. You're going to have more colds, more flus, more viral infections, because those things will get trapped and find their way down into the body, or worse, into other parts of the body, okay. So you can see here it says the eustachian tube orifice, and so that's going to lead to the ear passage, not directly to the outer ear, but to the ear passage. And you'll notice, you'll see someone, people, you go on the internet, you'll see someone use a straw or a piece of spaghetti, and you can take it and go through your nose and out through your mouth. Sounds gross, but that's the truth. You see people who can drink and they can make things come out through their eyes and things like that, okay. That's all to do with the sinuses and how the interconnectedness of the sinuses, okay. So mucus now. Mucus, as I've said several times within the presentation, is important, okay. The mucus needs to be in our body to, well, let's look, okay. What is mucus made out of? And I've put it here on the right. Mostly water, as most of the fluids. Our blood plasma is mostly water. The cytoplasm within our cells are mostly water. And mucus itself is mostly water. But it's hugely significant that it doesn't just contain water, okay. Just like our tears, just like our cytoplasm, just like our plasma. It also contains electrolytes, as anyone will know if you've ever tasted your mucus. It has that if you have a cold, you'll taste that sort of, how can you describe it? Salty taste. So mucus contains a lot of electrolytes, which are very important to maintain the electrostatic plasma scenario composition within the mucus. It contains a lot of immunoglobulins, which are basically protein antibodies, Okay, so the mucus is not just a response to disease as a negative, this is a disease coming out of me. It actually plays a role in healing the disease. So if you have bacteria and viruses, fungi, in that mucus, you have many different protein antibodies which are going to actively fight against those disease pathogens, as well as it contains antimicrobial enzymes. How powerful is that? So everyone right now wants to go and wash their hands with antimicrobial soap, especially right now, as I said, in this crisis of the coronavirus. You have the antibiotic soaps and antimicrobial soaps. So your mucus is a natural form of that. It contains the antibodies and the antimicrobial substances that you need. Okay? Mucus is also a charged substance. Now the charge of mucus, meaning the electrostatic charge, whether it's positive or negative, affects its viscosity, how thick it is, and also the osmotic potential of the mucus. So how does water move in or out? Does it attract water, or does water move away from mucus? Okay, so, and that's all to do with the electrolytes. So mucus is electrically charged, and this relates now to our diet. If we are not getting the correct electrolytes and eating the correct foods, particularly fruits and vegetables, to make sure our mucus has the right electrolytes and gives it the right charge, our mucus won't function properly. Okay, and that charge on it is affected by pH, and there's a huge link between electrolytes. When we say electrolytes, we just mean salts. We mean metals. We mean metal salts together, so a metal and a non-metal. Okay, and pH. The two go hand in hand within chemistry. Okay, and I have another slide where I'm going to talk about that. So your mucus is a quick sign of how healthy you are. We all know this. If you have a flu or a cold and that mucus comes up as green, that means that you have an active infection. Okay, and as it says here in the infogram, that means there are many dead white blood cells and other cellular debris, and that's a sign that's good, that your body is working hard to fight that infection, but you need to help it along. Okay, if it's yellow, it says that means you may be starting to fight a cold or infection. That comes from the dead white blood cells. So the body is starting to ramp its thing up, and that's a quick sign that you need to be aiding your body in fighting. Okay, if it's brown, okay, for example, if your nose has been bleeding or something like that, or for example, if your lungs have a chest infection and mucus is coming out brown, that means that there's a high amount of inflammation going on. So your body is on overdrive. And as it says here, you may have bronchitis. So this is something, for example, if you're a smoker, if you have emphysema or bronchitis, that means your lungs are not functioning properly. But our mucus should be clear. If you were to put your finger in your nose and you were healthy, you're going to see a clear liquid, and that's normal. That's what mucus should be like. Okay, and the mucus that we have in our body, if you've ever looked at a camera that's gone into your small intestine, into your large intestine, that it's covered with a layer of slime, and that's the mucus, a clear slime. And as it says here, it moisturizes all of the lining, all of the epithelial skin cells on the inside to keep them moist, so that diffusion can take place, absorption can take place, and that it can protect against the invasion of pathogens. So this is what healthy mucus looks like, and this is what unhealthy mucus looks like. Okay, so how can we make sure that we are having this healthy mucus, and what can we do? Well, this is from Wiki, but I also included some other links down the bottom from research.gov, research articles, Research Med, I think, and PubMed, and some of those things. If you go in and just do your own investigation, this will be confirmed. Okay, Don't take my word for it. This relates to how pH affects the viscosity of mucus. And it says here from Wiki, mucus serves as a protective function against acidic environments. Okay, so for example, in the stomach, that mucus has a high viscosity. Okay, meaning it's very thick, very thick. Okay, it needs to be because it's layering the stomach, and there's the pH level is so low. Okay, but here it says alkaline mucus in the stomach increases in thickness when the stomach is distended. Okay, so meaning if your body is not working properly and you have gas and bloating, the mucus gets thicker to protect against the illness that's going on. It says the pH level of the mucus also plays a role in its viscosity, as higher pH, meaning more alkaline pH levels, tend to alter the thickness of the mucus, making it less viscous. Okay, in other words, as we said in the previous slide, we want our mucus here to be able to be moved, not thick like this, not heavy with dead white blood cells and cellular debris. We want our mucus to be able to move, just a light lining. And as it says directly here, it says that the higher pH levels, so meaning a more alkaline condition in the body, can contribute to a more healthy mucus makeup. So we need to keep our body alkaline, and I'm going to talk about how to do that. Okay. It says invading agents such as Helicobacter, okay, in other words, things that give you ulcers, bacterium that give you ulcer, they can alter the pH of the mucus to make the mucus pliable enough to move through. So in the stomach, you want the mucus to be very thick, okay, very, very thick. And that's why it, in an acidic environment, it gets thick. But in other parts of the body, you don't want the mucus to be thick. So like the lungs, as we were saying, we don't want the mucus to be thick like that. And that means we need a more of an acidic environment feeding those parts of the body. It says exposure to atmospheric air also tends to increase the pH level of alkaline mucus. So right there, they've given a way of how we can make our mucus more healthy just by breathing in and getting more exposure to air will make our mucus more alkaline and thus make it at the right consistency so that it's at the right thickness. Okay, really important, and there's a lot of studies that have been done on that in terms of mucus. All right, so we're going to move on. So what is the danger of having this excess mucus, okay, and eating mucus forming foods? Well, as I said earlier, it's going to block your airways, and if it blocks the airways, it's going to deprive the cells and tissues of oxygen. It's going to force more CO2 in your blood, and that means that your cells are not going to function properly, your muscles are not going to function properly, they're not going to be healthy, and your brain's not going to function properly. So you won't function properly, you won't thrive. Key to this, though, is that we have another organ system in our body called the lymphatic system, and the lymphatic system is directly tied into the mucous membranes of the body. Okay, the lymph nodes, which are the different parts of the lymphatic system, where the white blood cells, a particular type of white blood cells, can be concentrated, they are directly linked to mucous membranes because, as we said, the mucus contains immunoglobulin proteins. So the lymph nodes are directly linked because the lymph nodes are going to be where the blood is draining and tissue fluid is draining into that lymph. And in the lymph nodes is where, for example, these factory workers of the white blood cells and all of the protective immunoresponse of the body is able to deal with any dead, dysfunctional, dying, any pathogens that might be within that drainage. And if you don't drain that lymph node properly, if instead it becomes a place where the mucus is not at the right viscosity and the disease pathogen then can be concentrated, the lymph nodes will swell. So sometimes people will have swelling of the lymph nodes in their neck or underneath their armpits, and that shows that the lymph is not draining properly, and that means that the mucus and the viscosity of the lymph fluid and the mucus is not at its correct and optimum level. This is hugely important because the lymphatic system is how your body, one of the key responses to how your body protects itself. It is the foundation, one of the foundations of the immune response. Okay, so having excess mucus blocking the lymphatic system so that tissues cannot drain into the lymphatic system is a killer. Okay, it's a huge killer. So how can we stop having this excess mucus? Well, we need to reduce the mucus forming foods that we eat, and I just put a few down here, the chief ones. Listen, it's not a lot. You just need to reduce certain chief mucus forming foods in your body, and we all hear about Dr. Sebi and the Dr. Sebi recommendations to have an alkaline diet. Okay, we've heard about other, I can't remember the book that came before Dr. Sebi, where he talks about the mucus-free diet. Okay, the mucus-free diet. I think it was a German guy. It's not new knowledge. People know about this. Okay, we just have to have the discipline to not engage and indulge in these mucus-forming foods. In particular, white flour, white sugar, white rice. In other words, refined foods. Refined foods, the foods that have had the nutrients stripped from them, okay, and you're left with just basically the starchy aspects, the white flour, the white sugar, the white rice. Those things are going to promote mucus in the body, and that's all to do with the alkaline balance. As we said, if the body becomes more acidic, the mucus gets thicker. So it's a response to the foods that you're eating, okay, the refined foods. Dairy promotes mucus in the body. So eating milk, eating cheese, in particular for people of African descent who don't have the enzymes to digest the proteins within milk, proteins within dairy, that's going to create an excess of acidity in the body, and then that's going to create more thicker mucus as a response. And when you have those things in the body, the proteins, see, the immune response is not just against pathogens that are just at the organism level. In other words, like a bacteria. Your immune will respond to foreign proteins also. Hence why if you get blood from somebody else, your immune system will fight against that. They will reject that blood if it's not the same, they have to give you drugs to suppress the immune response. And that's because the immune response is against proteins. And so when these foreign proteins come into our body, particularly from things like dairy, okay, which is from another animal, another mammal, very close in structure to us, it sees it as a foreign invader, these proteins, and that means they need to be drained from the tissues into the lymphatic system. And if the lymphatic system now is going to, if it cannot drain quickly enough, it's going to get clogged, and it's going to get clogged, and mucus and inflammation is going to form as a result. Inflammation will form and mucus will get trapped, and you're going to get mucus in your lymphatic tissue. And so you're going to see people who eat a certain way, their skin will be puffy. Areas underneath the eyes, areas here, the ankles, the neck. That means your body is not draining the lymph properly, okay? And you have an excess amount of mucus in the tissue. So we need to stay away. I put here, for example, certain nuts. I eat lots of nuts, but some nuts are more mucus forming than others. So if I eat cashews, I know that's going to form mucus in my body. But the mucus from the cashew is not going to be the same as what you will get from other refined foods. Okay? But if you have a problem with mucus, you might want to consider not indulging in certain nuts like cashews and going, for example, things like almond which are less mucus forming, okay? Because almonds are more protein based, whereas cashews are a bit more sweet, a bit more starch based. So reducing the mucus, we talked about what mucus should look like, we talked about why, we talked about the optimal function of the organs, and here we're talking about the danger of excess mucus, and now we're talking about mucus forming foods and what we need to remove from the body. What we mean, primarily from what we eat. Okay? That's the first part of removing mucus from the body. And here I have a picture of the lymphatic system, and you can see all over the body you have the lymph nodes, all the way down into the legs, around the reproductive organs, up and down the spinal area, down into the arms, underneath the armpits. There are a lot of them in the neck. Okay, and you see the correlation, for example, to parts of the sinuses and the head. And I like this one, it's interesting because it relates to the back as well. And if you certain times you'll find that if your lymphatic system isn't draining, you'll get boils or large pimples on your back, and that's a sign that your body is toxic. Your body is not draining the mucus, which is not coming out this way through your mouth or through your nose or through your excretion of your poo, for example. Is coming out through other organs, the mucous membranes in other parts of your body, because the body will remove mucus in any way possible, any way it can remove it. Okay, hugely important. And you can see for a woman how much of her lymph nodes, lymphatic system, is concentrated around her chest and around her breast areas. It says lymph nodes of the mammary gland. So her breasts are operating within this lymphatic system. So if your lymphatic system and the mucus within your body is not healthy, even you as a mother who is feeding her child, you could not be given the optimum levels. The body is amazing, so the body is going to filter everything it needs and make sure it gives the right thing to the child. But still, we need to have those optimum levels of mucus within our body so that our lymphatic system operates properly and operates correctly. And you can see all here on the face, all of the lymphatic going all up inside the skin, up towards the head, towards the eyes. Hugely important, and all of that's tied in with mucus. So how can we remove mucus? Okay, now that we talked about the importance of having mucus and having it healthy and removing excess amounts of mucus, and we said that, we talked about what can create mucus in the body, which can be the types of foods that we eat, as well as the onset of disease, okay, such as asthma, such as flus and cold, which is from viruses, flu virus, cold virus, okay, or you might have a condition such as allergies, which is basically asthma, histamine reactions cause inflammation that can cause mucus. How can we remove this mucus? Well, I've put down some key things. One, you need to stay hydrated, because the water, obviously, we said that mucus, the main component of mucus is water, and water is going to help that mucus to be less viscous, so that means it can be removed, because your mucus, you don't want to get stale. Your body will constantly produce it. Okay, as long as you're taking water, taking in electrolytes, your body's going to produce the mucus that it needs. So stay hydrated. Hugely important. And I've put these in order of things people can easily do and of importance. So staying hydrated is important. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I go have a glass of water. Okay, a glass of water, because overnight the mucus has been sitting there protecting the body, protecting the airways, protecting the eyes, protecting the nerves, protecting the reproductive system, protecting the digestive system. So the water now is going to flush it and flush down, and then I'll go and go to the toilet and wee or have a bowel movement. And that is important. That's staying hydrated all through the kidneys, getting the kidneys. The lymphatic system is directly connected to the to the kidneys, to the renal system. Okay, So staying hydrated is important with quality water. Okay, deep breathing, as we said, having the oxygen and the air coming in will affect the pH and the viscosity of the mucus in the air passages. So you need to breathe, and not just breathe shallow, but breathe deeply, because we said that the air passages, the bronchioles, get smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay? The bronchioles and the bronchi and goes down into the alveoli, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So we want to get the air and put pressure and push out your stomach, your abdomen, when you're breathing, because that's going to actually pull down the diaphragm and create a negative pressure, and pull the air deeply into your bronchioles, into your alveoli, okay, and help to freshen up the mucus and make sure that it is able to move so that it can clear successfully. Your mucus will move up with the cilia, which are in your air passages. So if it's thin, your cilia are going to move it up, and then it's going to move to your throat, where you're going to swallow it. And when you swallow it, your digestive system is going to break it down, recycle the electrolytes, but kill any pathogens. So having the mucus at the right consistency is hugely important, and deep breathing is hugely important. So breathing every morning, taking time to breathe, whether that's in your meditation, whether that's in exercise or something like that. Don't eat and reduce mucus forming foods. And a great book for that is the Back to Eden book, which talks about healthy eating. It's a classic book. This was since 1939. This is one of the more newer editions. You see this cover here, but there's many books out there that I could recommend. So Queen Afua books, Dr. Laila Africa books. Okay, these books are hugely important because they talk about, and Dr. Sebi's information talk about how to reduce mucus forming foods within our body. Okay, which means basically eating a plant-based diet, and a fresh plant-based diet. So eating more fruits, more vegetables, the more closer to the original form, the better. Okay, that's going to be the most important thing to not produce excess amounts of mucus in the body. In particular, if you are in an ill condition, if you are ill and you find that you have a cold or flu and you have excess amounts of mucus, then you want to move as quickly as possible to these remedies: drinking lots of water, deep breathing, reducing the mucus forming foods, and the next one, which is sunshine. Hugely important for the immune system. Just the heat alone, okay, the interaction of the electromagnetic waves on the body will stimulate an immune response, the production of vitamin D, okay, which is healthy, which it creates a healthy immune response, and that is going to eliminate mucus, okay, from your body being in the sun. And don't be afraid to let the mucus out. Not to be crude, but if you need to spit out mucus, find somewhere that's hygienic, you know, whether it's your toilet, whether it's in a tissue, or whether it's, you know, away from people, and remove the mucus. Okay, good hygiene. So every day washing, practicing good hygiene, because the hygiene is not just about cleaning the body, it's about stimulating the skin, and underneath the skin you have the circulatory system and the lymphatic system. So when you washing with a cloth, washing with some sort of object which allows you, or your hand, but better a cloth or something, which allows you to stimulate the skin and the lymphatic system, which gets the mucus and the lymph fluid moving. Okay, you can also do dry skin brushing, which you can look up, which is where you don't use, when you're not using water. So before you get a bath or a shower, you take something like a loofah pad or a dry skin brush, and you brush, okay, towards the heart, okay, around your body. And what's that going to do is going to stimulate the exfoliation of the dead skin cells, as well as stimulate your lymphatic system. and open up your pores. It just stimulates your skin, and then you go and get your bath or your shower. Okay, so good hygiene, very important. Using natural products in your skin, like essential oils to wash with. That's going to open the pores and help the skin to operate efficiently. Okay, exercise, hugely important. Why? Because one, is going to open up the respiratory passages, which we've spoken about several times already. Okay, and getting that pressure, getting that good exchange of gases, but also it's going to increase your heart rate, and that's going to increase your blood flow, which is going to increase the lymph drainage from the tissues, and that's going to increase the movement of mucus in a healthy way around the body and out the body. So exercise is hugely important. If you have a problem with mucus, you need to make sure that you're exercising, and exercise that promotes good circulation. Not weightlifting, which is good, of course, you want strength training, but we're talking about aerobic exercise, things where you're moving the body quicker. Anaerobic exercise, moving the body quicker. So that could be running, could be some form of martial arts, whatever your chosen form of exercise in, swimming, so on and so on. Okay, exercise hugely important. Using demulcents and expectorants, meaning substances that help to remove mucus. Okay, use of mucus removing fruits, especially citrus fruits. Every day I try to have an orange. The citrus fruits are very good at removing mucus. The sour the better. Okay, so we all know that when you have a cold or flu, the first thing you want to go to is a grapefruit or a lemon. Why? Because the citric acid nature of those fruits are actually going to create more alkaline conditions in your body. Okay, but at the same time, as we said, the acidity is going to thicken up the mucus and help you to remove it also. So it works like in a dual way, the citrus fruits. The mucus it gets in contact with, it's going to thicken up, help remove, but as it creates a more alkaline condition in the body, it's going to loosen up mucus and help you to remove it that way. Okay, green vegetables such as the cruciferous family, meaning broccoli and cabbage, Brussels sprouts, very important. Okay, because they don't produce mucus in the body, and they contain so many different types of sulfur containing compounds, antioxidants that help to create that positive immune response and give you the electrolytes and all the different things you need to help your mucus being able to move. Things like tomato, hugely important, okay, at removing mucus, whether you're eating them raw or whether you're having it in some sort of sauce. Medicinal herbs, if you have a problem, and that's where this book is hugely important, with mucus due to a disease within your body. So whether that's asthma, whether that is cystic fibrosis, whether that is a cold or flu, sinus issues. Medicinal herbs are your best medicine cabinet to reducing mucus. Depending on what your condition is, some herbs are more powerful than others. Okay, so things like cayenne and different peppers are hugely important. You know that when you eat a hot Indian curry or spicy Chinese food or spicy Thai food, your nose immediately starts to run, your eyes start to water, you feel clear, your nasal passages feel clear. That's the power of the medicines, the herbs that are in those foods, the spices, things like thyme. Okay, you can drink thyme as a tea if you're suffering from mucus forming issues, basil, oregano, all those things with essential oils. Now, if you're having a particular problem, there's some stronger herbs like mullein. Okay, mullein, and if you just go to the book, there's lots of different herbs, particularly that help to reduce mucus in the body. If you're fortunate to be around the ocean, okay, ocean swimming is hugely important. So if you have a head cold and it's warm enough and you feel up to it, you can go for a swim, and that's going to remove the mucus from the body. Okay, hugely important, because that saline water gets into the mucous membranes, and then your body wants to get rid of the salt stimulus, as well as we said the electrolyte balance causes the mucus to run out. It causes the mucus to become less viscous. If you're not fortunate to be around as oceanic body, that's salt water, you can make your own ocean, okay, and what we call a nasal saline rinse. Some call it a neti rinse. So you'll mix up a small proportion of salt with fresh, clean water, okay, and you're going to take that up the nasal passages, breathing deeply so it goes up into the sinuses. You're not going to swallow though, okay, and you're going to then push it out, hold one nostril and push it out. And there are many videos online. In fact, I have a video online about how to do that at the ocean. Really important if you're suffering from blocked sinuses, because remember, the blocked sinuses are going to harbor lots of dust and disease. Okay, and in addition to that, you can do airway steaming. So you can use essential oils like some of the herbs we mentioned earlier, but my particular favorites are things like eucalyptus, lemon oil, mint. Okay, you just need little amounts, frankincense, myrrh, and you use essential oils. Use boiling water, pour them in a pot, put a towel over your head and breathe in. Be careful because the steam can be quite hot, but you breathe in gently, and that infuses down into the respiratory system and helps to open up the respiratory system. Once the respiratory system is open, the mucus can come out a bit more. Okay, so these things are key to removing mucus within the body. I've given, what's that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different methods. Most of them don't cost much, if anything. Okay, with the chief one being don't eat and reduce mucus forming foods. So I'm going to bring the video to a close just by talking about this, because as adults we make choices in our lives that will affect our health, and as we make these choices in our lives, we have to be accountable for them. Children do not have a choice. We are the ones taking care of them. And many children will not know what it feels like to live a mucus-free life, okay? And I'm speaking from experience, not me myself, but I have children, and it's not comfortable when you see your children not able to breathe. And what I want to finish with is that it's not always at a time when they have some sort of illness, okay? Lots of people in general, and children in particular, think that their normal is not being able to breathe properly. So when they talk, you can hear that the nasal passages are clogged because they sound clogged, they sound stuffed up. But because people are used to hearing them that way, they don't think anything of it. As well as they think that they themselves, they have never heard themselves properly because the nasal passages and the sinuses are blocked up. And as you know, if you travel on an airplane, or if you come from swimming from deep, and if you ever dove like me, swim in the ocean and you're diving down deep, your ears can pop. If you come off an airplane, your ears can pop. You sound completely different. It's the best feeling in the world. It's like, whoa, okay, now my head is clear. Many of our children are going through life with their sinuses clogged. That means that not only are their sinuses clogged, that means they probably also have mucus issues in their body also. Not just in their respiratory system, but also within the lymphatic system, which means that the body is not going to function right, which means that the brain is not going to function right, the blood is not going to be at the right levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide, the tissues, so on and so on. And that means the development will be stunted. Okay, it won't be the optimum that it could be. and hence I put this picture of some children playing by the ocean. And it says, watch your thoughts, they lead to attitudes. Watch your attitudes, they lead to words. Watch your words, they lead to actions. Watch your actions, they lead to habits. And it's that last one that I wrote there, that someone wrote in this quote, watch your actions, they lead to habits. We need to make it habits for our children that they are living a life where they're living a healthy life, where mucus is working at an optimum level for them, not against them. That mucus doesn't become a disease portion within their body, a disease promoter in their body. And for many children, that's not happening. Why? Because they're being fed the refined foods. They're not getting enough exercise. They're not drinking enough water. Okay? We're very good at practicing good hygiene. Oh, you must get your shower, you must do this, you must brush your teeth, so on and so on. But what about the things that we're feeding them? And then what happens as a result? They're more susceptible to disease, so they have more colds, they have more flus, more infections. And it's all to do with the mucus in their body. Okay? As Dr. Sebi will say, mucus in the body is the precursor to all of the aspects of disease. And a lot of people will fight against that statement, especially people in the medical profession. But I think they're looking at it too simplistically. When he's talking about mucus, he's talking about that interstitial cellular fluid draining into the lymph system. And as I showed earlier, science has backed up the importance of mucus if it's at the right composition and right pH and right chemistry. So if we're not doing the right things for our children, we are opening them up to disease across all of the organ systems. And that's one of the most important messages why I'm putting out this video. Because if we want our children to not only thrive in this world they're living in, which is full of challenges, but we also want them to take themselves and our community to another level, then their physical aspects need to be taken to another level. They need to be doing things that we are not doing at the moment. So with that, I'll say peace, I'll say love, hand to my heart, give thanks. I'm Dr. David Roots.